Saturn. The name alone sounds like something ancient, almost divine. It echoes with a weight of mystery, a world wrapped in gold, hidden behind its own perfection. For centuries, we've looked at it through telescopes and photographs, each time believing we were seeing the real thing. But what if we weren't? What if every image we've ever known was only a glimpse, an edited reflection of a truth far more haunting and beautiful? This is Saturn, the planet scientists rarely show unfiltered. And tonight, we look again. The story of Saturn begins not with science, but with awe. Before telescopes, before spacecraft, there were eyes and imagination. Ancient civilizations saw a glowing wanderer moving slowly across the heavens, brighter than most stars, yet never quite revealing itself. To the Romans, Saturn was a god, the keeper of time and cycles, of creation and decay. In the East, it was a celestial omen, distant, cold, and unyielding. For millennia, it hung above us like a symbol of permanence in an ever-changing sky. Then came the telescope, and humanity saw something it couldn't explain. In 1610, Galileo Galilei pointed his primitive lens toward Saturn and wrote that the planet seemed to have ears. He had no words for what he saw. He thought perhaps Saturn was three bodies fused together, one large sphere with two small companions. He didn't yet realize that what he saw was a single world with rings. But he saw enough to know this planet was not like any other. Centuries later, as our instruments improved, Saturn's mystery deepened. When Cassini and Huygens and Giovanni Cassini studied it, they discovered that those ears were enormous, flat rings made of countless icy fragments orbiting in impossible harmony. But even as knowledge grew, so did the illusion. Artists and astronomers began to color the world of Saturn with imagination. Soft yellows, luminous golds, gentle clouds. What we saw in books and images was never pure truth, but interpretation, and perhaps that's where the mystery truly begins. Because Saturn doesn't actually look like the photographs most of us know. When we see NASA's images, what we're seeing are enhanced composites, combinations of visible light, infrared, ultraviolet. The contrast is pushed, the color balanced, the shadows deepened. The results are breathtaking, yes, but filtered through the human desire for beauty and comprehension. In raw, unprocessed form, Saturn is softer, colder, more ethereal, a world of pale hues, like cream and ash brushed across a canvas of endless distance. It's not deception, it's translation. Space is silent and colorless by nature. Cameras aboard spacecraft like Cassini capture data, not feelings. Scientists enhance the images so we can feel what the raw data can't convey. But in that process, something subtle happens. The truth becomes poetic, and the poetry replaces the truth. And so the question arises, what does Saturn really look like? That's the mystery we're chasing tonight. But this isn't just about images. It's about perception itself. The way we see Saturn reveals how we see the universe and ourselves. We prefer beauty over reality, perfection over truth. We want the universe to look the way we imagine it should, not necessarily the way it is. And Saturn, with its impossible rings and flawless symmetry, became the perfect mirror for that desire. Think about it. Every planet has its scars, craters, storms, chaos. But Saturn seems untouched. Too perfect, too elegant, almost unreal. And maybe that's why scientists and artists alike have always been captivated by it. It's the paradox of the cosmos. The closer we look, the more artificial perfection appears. But there's something even deeper behind those rings. Something cameras can't capture and filters can't hide. when the Cassini spacecraft arrived in 2004. It began sending back images so detailed that they changed everything we thought we knew. For the first time, we saw the shadows of the rings falling across the planet, the auroras flickering at its poles, the hexagonal storm spinning endlessly at the north. We saw the truth, raw, strange, magnificent. And it was then that scientists realized the beauty of Saturn doesn't need enhancement. The unprocessed images, stripped of glamour, were more haunting and profound than anything Photoshop could make. Yet those photos were rarely shown to the public, not because of conspiracy, but because they were too subtle, too quiet. They didn't scream for attention. They whispered. And whispers don't go viral. But if you look closer, really closer, at the raw images from Cassini's archives, you'll see something transcendent, a planet that looks alive, not in the biological sense, but in movement, in texture, in light. The storms shift like living organisms. The rings shimmer like waves frozen in time. It's not a painting. It's a pulse. So why haven't you seen Saturn this way before? Because we're drawn to spectacle, not silence. We crave drama, not patience. And Saturn, in its truest form, demands patience. It's the slowest planet visible to the naked eye, moving so gradually across the night sky that ancient astronomers named it after the god of time itself. It teaches us to see slowly, to appreciate subtlety, to accept that beauty doesn't always need to dazzle. Sometimes it just needs to exist. That's the secret we'll explore in this journey. Because to see the real Saturn, you don't need better cameras. You need new eyes. By the end of this story, you'll understand why the unfiltered Saturn, the pale, distant, whispering world, is more beautiful than the golden planet we've built in our imagination. And maybe, in discovering its true face, we'll rediscover a part of our own. Before there were telescopes, before we even had names for the stars, we had wonder. The night sky was not a mystery to be solved. It was a presence to be felt. Every flicker of light, every slow-moving glow held meaning. It guided migrations, shaped calendars, and inspired myths that became the roots of civilizations. And among those countless points of light, there was one that seemed to move with unusual dignity. Slow, steady, never hurried. That light was Saturn. When our ancestors first looked up, they didn't see a planet of gas and storms. They saw a god. To the Babylonians, Saturn was Ninurta, the bringer of harvests and justice. The Greeks called him Kronos, the devourer of time. And the Romans, inheriting the legend, named him Saturnus, the guardian of seasons and memory. Every culture saw in that pale golden wanderer something ancient, something unshakable, a symbol of the universe's patience. It's easy to forget how powerful that first act of looking up really was. They had no instruments, no equations, no physics, only awe. Yet, in that awe, they found truth. They realized the heavens were not chaos, but rhythm. Everything moved with purpose, every cycle repeated, and time itself was written in the stars. Imagine the night thousands of years ago. No cities, no noise, only silence and the heartbeat of the sky. A small group gathers around a fire, and one of them points upward to that faint, steady light. That one doesn't move like the rest, someone says. They begin to mark its position with stones, then with ink, then with stories. And slowly, the idea of eternity takes shape. Saturn wasn't just a dot of light. It was an idea that the universe is grand, orderly, and far older than we are. It taught humanity its first lesson in humility. As time passed, myth and observation began to intertwine. Priests became astronomers. Temples became observatories. the heavens became both sacred and scientific. And Saturn, always distant, always slow, became a measure of time itself. In some cultures, the week ended with Saturn's day. Saturday, the day of reflection and rest. Even now, the name lingers, a quiet echo of our ancient fascination. But while Saturn moved above, humanity changed below. We learned to measure angles and motions, to predict eclipses, to map the sky. Yet, no matter how advanced our tools became, that feeling of awe never faded. The more we understood, the deeper the mystery grew. There's a strange paradox in astronomy. The more we can see, the less we truly know. Every discovery opens another layer of questions, and Saturn has always embodied that paradox. By the time of Galileo, the world had changed forever. The telescope turned the heavens from myth into a realm of detail. The moon gained mountains and shadows. Jupiter had moons of its own. But when Galileo turned his lens to Saturn, he was stunned. The image was blurry, incomplete. But something about that planet defied understanding. It had shapes, extensions, ears, as he described them, as if the universe itself was whispering, "You're not ready to know yet." For the first time in history, the mystery of Saturn moved from myth to evidence. And that evidence only deepened the wonder. Because now, for the first time, we weren't imagining Saturn. We were seeing it, or at least trying to. Centuries later, Cassini and Huygens would give the planet its rings and its largest moon, Titan. Giovanni Cassini would map the gaps between those rings and sketch the planet's motion. But even as the sketches became photographs, and photographs became data, Saturn remained something more than an object of study. It was still an emotion, a quiet, haunting reminder that the universe holds beauty beyond comprehension. When we first looked up, we weren't scientists. We were dreamers tracing meaning in the stars. And in a way, we still are. Technology may have replaced stone circles and parchment maps, but our gaze is the same. Searching, longing, reverent. And maybe that's why Saturn affects us the way it does. It's not just another world. It's the embodiment of the unknown. Its rings are not just ice and dust. They're symbols of everything we can't quite grasp, but can't stop reaching for. Think of what Saturn looked like to a person in 3000 BCE. A golden eye in the darkness, slow and patient. They didn't know it was a planet made of hydrogen, or that storms raged across its poles, or that its rings would one day fade. But they knew, instinctively, that it mattered. It reminded them that the universe was vast, and that within that vastness, they were small, yet significant. We've spent millennia trying to explain that feeling with equations and diagrams. But the truth is, the first astronomers already understood something that science sometimes forgets. Knowledge without wonder is hollow. Saturn didn't need to be measured to be meaningful. It just needed to be seen. Every time a human eye has turned toward Saturn, from a Babylonian priest to a NASA engineer, it's been part of the same story. A story of longing, a story of reaching for light that's too far to touch. That act, that gaze, connects us across time more than any invention ever could. Because when we first looked up, we didn't just discover the heavens. We discovered ourselves, our curiosity, our hunger for meaning, our ability to find beauty in the unreachable. And Saturn, the slowest, the farthest, the most elegant of visible worlds, became the symbol of that search. In every age, in every language, we've given it new names and new meanings. But its role has never changed. It's still there, teaching us patience, teaching us reverence, teaching us to look up not for answers, but for questions. And so, as we continue our journey, from myths to telescopes to spacecraft, we're not leaving behind that first moment of wonder. We're carrying it with us. Every new image, every new discovery, is another version of that same gaze that began thousands of years ago, when someone pointed at the sky and whispered, "Look." It was the winter of 1610. In a small Italian town, a man peered through a handmade telescope, a fragile tube of glass and wood trembling in his hands. The sky above was cold, indifferent, infinite. The man was Galileo Galilei, and that night he was about to change the way humanity saw the heavens. He had already turned his lens toward the moon, discovering mountains and shadows. Proof that it wasn't a perfect, polished sphere as the philosophers claimed. He had seen Jupiter with its own tiny moons, a miniature solar system orbiting another world. Each observation tore a hole in the comfortable illusions of the age. But then, one night, he pointed the telescope at a pale, golden light, a slow-moving star that ancient astronomers called the planet of time. That light was Saturn. What Galileo saw was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. The planet appeared distorted, blurred, with strange shapes at its sides. "It seems to have ears," he wrote, and he believed for a moment that Saturn might be a triple planet, one large sphere with two smaller ones attached. He had discovered something no one else had seen, but he couldn't understand what it was. Imagine that moment. A man, alone in the dark, staring at the impossible. The heavens were no longer perfect, no longer divine. They were strange, mechanical, and vast. The universe had secrets, and he had accidentally glimpsed one of them. Galileo didn't know it, but he had just become the first human to see Saturn's rings. The problem was, his telescope wasn't powerful enough to resolve them. The rings appeared as lumps or handles, a shape that made no sense. For years he struggled to understand what he had seen. His confusion wasn't failure. It was the beginning of understanding. That's the thing about discovery. It rarely arrives as revelation. It comes first as confusion, as doubt, as the quiet voice that says, something doesn't fit. Galileo didn't solve Saturn's mystery, but he opened the door to it. Centuries later, historians would call his notes the first encounter with illusion in space. Because Saturn has always been an illusion, even in our most detailed photographs. It's too perfect, too balanced, too serene to feel real. And maybe that's why Galileo's blurred vision of it feels so honest. He saw Saturn not as an image, but as a mystery. In those years, astronomy was still half faith, half rebellion. The church dictated the cosmos. Earth was the center of creation. To suggest otherwise was heresy. Yet Galileo's telescope told a different story. A story of movement, of imperfection, of endlessness. Every time he looked through that fragile glass, he was staring directly into danger. And yet, he couldn't stop looking. When Galileo wrote to his colleagues about Saturn, his letters were filled with hesitation. "I have observed the most extraordinary thing," he said, "which perhaps no one has seen before me." There's wonder in his tone, but also frustration. He wanted to understand, but the technology, and perhaps the time itself, wasn't ready. It would take nearly 50 years before Cassini and Huygens, using a more advanced telescope, would decipher the truth. Saturn was surrounded by a thin, flat ring that did not touch the planet. Huygens described it with humility. A ring, thin and flat, nowhere touching. But even then, the mystery only deepened. For Galileo, however, the damage was done. His peers questioned his findings. Some accused him of seeing things that weren't there. Others said his ears of Saturn were artifacts of a flawed lens, imperfections in the glass, not in the cosmos. But Galileo held his ground. He knew what he saw, even if he didn't yet know what it meant. And that's where the story becomes human. Because Galileo's confusion mirrors ours. We still look at Saturn and wonder if we're truly seeing it. Every photo, every model, every composite is an interpretation, shaped by instruments, filtered by perception. Just like Galileo, we're staring through our own imperfect lenses, trying to make sense of something beyond understanding. If you've ever looked at a picture of Saturn and thought, it can't be real, you're feeling what Galileo felt that night. The dissonance between what you expect and what you see. The mind struggles to accept perfection as truth. But in that struggle, something magical happens. Curiosity is born. Galileo's confusion ignited centuries of exploration. Each misinterpretation, each unanswered question became a stepping stone to deeper knowledge. Without his flawed telescope, there would be no Huygens, no Cassini, no Voyager, no images of Saturn glowing like a ghost in the blackness. In a sense, Galileo's blurred vision was the first photograph of wonder itself. He saw imperfection and called it beauty. He saw the unknown and dared to describe it. And though history remembers him for defying authority, perhaps his greatest rebellion was against certainty. There's a quiet lesson hidden in that moment. We often think progress is about clarity, sharper images, better data, more precision. But the truth is, progress begins with confusion. With someone brave enough to say, I don't understand, but I want to. That's what Galileo gave us, not answers, but permission to ask questions. His confusion is still alive in us every time we look up and wonder. Every spacecraft that approaches Saturn is, in spirit, an extension of that first trembling telescope. Each new image refines what he began, transforming ears into rings, mystery into understanding. And yet, even with all our technology, the feeling remains the same. Awe, curiosity, a whisper of fear. Galileo could never have imagined what we know now. That Saturn's rings are made of billions of ice fragments, that storms roar across its poles at hundreds of miles per hour, that it rains diamonds in its upper atmosphere. But if he were alive today, he wouldn't marvel at the data. He'd marvel that the mystery endures. Because the universe never stops being mysterious. Maybe that's what Saturn teaches us most. That confusion is not the opposite of knowledge, but the path to it. In Galileo's blurred image lies the essence of human discovery. We see dimly, we guess boldly, and somehow, through error and wonder, we find truth. By the middle of the 17th century, the world was changing. The age of superstition was fading, and the age of reason had begun to dawn. The telescope, once a novelty, had become a key, and through that keyhole, humanity was beginning to unlock the architecture of the universe itself. For thousands of years, Saturn had been a mythic figure, a god, a symbol, a story written in the night. But now, with glass lenses and mathematics, it was becoming something else entirely. A world. The boundaries between heaven and earth were dissolving. This was the age of discovery, a time when curiosity became courage and knowledge became power. The Renaissance had already taught Europe to question everything. Art had rediscovered beauty, science had rediscovered truth, and philosophy had rediscovered doubt. And above it all, Saturn waited. Silent, distant, glowing like a golden beacon, calling minds upward. In 1655, Cassini and Huygens looked at Saturn through a new kind of telescope. one that extended the reach of human vision further than ever before. What he saw changed astronomy forever. The ears that had so confused Galileo were not moons or anomalies. They were a ring, thin, flat, and separate from the planet itself. It was a revelation. For the first time, Saturn became a place of structure, not chaos, a planet with a system all its own. Huygens also discovered a moon, Titan, larger than Mercury, wrapped in mystery and haze. His sketches were delicate, but his words carried awe. It is encircled by a thin, flat ring, nowhere touching the planet itself. Those simple words marked a turning point in human understanding. The universe, once an unknowable divine creation, was now a realm of order. Nature had rules. The cosmos had logic. And Saturn, the god of time, had become a teacher of truth. But discovery is never just about what we find. It's about what we imagine afterward. The 17th and 8th centuries became an age of maps, not just of oceans and continents, but of the heavens. Astronomers began charting the solar system like explorers drawing coastlines. Telescopes multiplied. Every wealthy noble wanted an observatory. Every university wanted to touch the stars. Giovanni Cassini, an Italian mathematician and astronomer, was among those who pushed the frontier further. In 1675, he discovered that Saturn's ring wasn't one solid structure but divided, a thin black gap separating two broad bands. Today, that division bears his name, the Cassini division. He also identified 4 more moons, Iapetus, Rhea, Tethys, and Dione, each a frozen world orbiting the great giant. His notes read like poetry disguised as data. Iapetus, dark on one side and bright on the other, turns its face to Saturn as if to hide something. The discoveries of that era weren't just scientific. They were spiritual. Humanity was learning to see without fear. The universe was not an enemy, it was an invitation. Each new observation dismantled a myth and replaced it with something even more awe-inspiring: reality. And yet, even as the details became clearer, the wonder did not fade. The more precisely we saw Saturn, the more mysterious it became. How could a ring of ice and rock remain so perfect? How could a planet made of gas look so serene? What kept its moons in such graceful balance? The thinkers of the Enlightenment wrestled with these questions, not as theologians, but as dreamers of a new kind. For them, the heavens were not the domain of gods. They were the masterpiece of nature. And in that masterpiece, Saturn stood as its most elegant design. By the 8th century, Saturn had become the symbol of the scientific spirit itself. Patient, methodical, beautiful. It was the planet of time and reason, the quiet reward for those who dared to look closer. But even as telescopes improved, even as sketches grew more precise, the distance remained cruel. No one could touch Saturn. No one could visit it. The age of discovery had given us sight, but not reach. Still, that didn't stop humanity from dreaming. Artists painted Saturn with divine brushstrokes. Composers wrote music to capture its calm. Writers imagined voyages beyond the Earth, toward that pale golden sphere. Saturn became both muse and mystery, a symbol of what we could see but not yet grasp. In many ways, the scientific revolution was not an end to wonder, but a rebirth of it. Saturn proved that truth could be as beautiful as myth, maybe even more so. For the first time, knowledge and imagination worked together, not in conflict. The astronomer and the poet, the mathematician and the artist, were now looking through the same telescope. In that unity, a new kind of faith was born. Faith not in dogma, but in discovery itself. Even now, when we look at Huygens' old sketches or Cassini's meticulous diagrams. There's something deeply human about them. They remind us that discovery isn't cold or mechanical. It's intimate, it's emotional. It's an act of love, love for truth, for beauty, for the simple miracle of existing in a universe vast enough to be curious about. The age of discovery didn't just redefine Saturn. It redefined us. It taught us that distance is not a wall, only a challenge. That mystery is not fear, but invitation. And that the pursuit of knowledge, like Saturn's orbit, has no end. Only cycles of deeper understanding. The scientists of that era looked through their telescopes and saw not just another planet, but a reflection of humanity itself, reaching outward, uncertain, but filled with light. They couldn't know that centuries later, machines bearing their names, Cassini and Huygens, would travel millions of miles to see Saturn up close. They couldn't know that one day we would finally touch the edge of their dreams. But they believed. And that belief, that quiet, relentless belief in the power of curiosity, was the real discovery of their time. We call it the age of discovery, but perhaps it was really the age of becoming, when we stopped fearing the heavens and started belonging to them. When we imagine Saturn, we imagine gold, a luminous, honey-colored world glowing like an ancient jewel, wrapped in light and grace. Its rings shimmer with silver, its clouds swirl in amber and cream. But that image, the one we all carry in our minds, isn't quite real. It's art. It's translation. The truth is both subtler and more astonishing. Space is dark, light is rare. And the cameras we send across the void are not human eyes. They are machines, built to capture what we cannot see. They don't dream, they don't interpret, and they certainly don't feel. They record raw data, wavelengths, photons, numbers. When NASA or ESA publishes a photo of Saturn, it's not what the spacecraft actually saw. It's what scientists want us to see. A constructed image, built from invisible light, adjusted for contrast and color balanced so that our brains can understand it. We call them true color images. But in reality, there is no such thing. Saturn's hues shift depending on light, shadow, and chemistry. Under the pale sunlight of its orbit, its clouds aren't golden. They're muted shades of beige, ivory, and smoke. The rings aren't silver, but a subtle palette of grays and creams, occasionally laced with icy blues. The planet we see in magazines is a myth built on calibration. And yet, it's a beautiful myth. The illusion of color doesn't lie to us. It invites us closer. It reminds us that perception is a kind of translation, a bridge between data and emotion. Without it, Saturn would be nothing but numbers on a screen. With it, it becomes something alive in our minds. When the Cassini spacecraft reached Saturn in 2004, it began sending back thousands of raw images. Many were ghostly, monochrome, almost silent. They showed faint gradients, blurred storms, soft halos of reflected light. To the untrained eye, they seemed lifeless. But to scientists, they were full of hidden truth. Each pixel told a story of chemistry, temperature, motion. Hydrogen and helium blending into storms the size of continents. Shadows of rings stretching across the atmosphere. Lightning flickering deep within the clouds, invisible to human sight, but recorded by instruments tuned to frequencies our eyes will never know. When those images were processed, enhanced, colored, balanced, they became what we now recognize as Saturn. But in that transformation, something remarkable happened. Science turned into art. The illusion of color is not deception, it's communication. It's how we translate the language of the cosmos into something the human heart can feel. Think of it this way. The universe doesn't speak English or Russian or mathematics. It speaks in light. We interpret that light through the lens of emotion, through the need to understand and to belong. So when we paint Saturn gold, we're not falsifying it. We're confessing our awe. Even Galileo, looking through his primitive telescope, didn't see color, only form and shadow. The gold we now associate with Saturn is a human invention, a mirror of how we want the universe to look. Serene, perfect, eternal. But the real Saturn, the unfiltered Saturn, is not perfect. It's a world of subtle violence. Storms twist silently beneath layers of haze. Winds roar faster than any hurricane on Earth. Shadows stretch for thousands of kilometers. Its beauty is not in its brightness, but in its quiet defiance of chaos. When Cassini plunged into Saturn's atmosphere for its final mission in 2017, its instruments recorded the faintest blues, colors of methane scattering sunlight, mixed with deep ochres and grays. It was neither gold nor silver, but something entirely its own. The color of distance, the color of truth. The scientists wept as they watched the last data stream fade. Not because Saturn was gone, but because, for the first time, they had truly seen it. Not the painted version, not the myth, but the living planet. Massive, complex, and humblingly real. We often think beauty lies in perfection, but Saturn teaches us otherwise. Its colors, both imagined and true, show us that beauty lives in imperfection, in the gap between what we see and what we understand. The illusion of color is the story of all human knowledge. Every time we translate reality into art, every time we assign emotion to truth, we color the universe in our image. And that's not a flaw. It's our gift. Because perhaps the universe too is trying to understand itself through us. The golden Saturn of our imagination isn't false. It's our interpretation of the infinite. It's how our fragile human minds make sense of the unimaginable. When we gaze at its rings, gleaming against the void, we're not seeing deception. We're seeing our longing, reflected back at us. Look again at those famous photographs, the ones that hang in classrooms and museums. The swirling bands, the sunlit arcs of the rings. They're not lies. They're translations of wonder. Every pixel, every hue, is a bridge between the mechanical and the emotional, between data and dream. When light from the sun travels 1 billion miles to strike Saturn's clouds, and then bounces across space to reach a tiny spacecraft, and then travels again to the screens of Earth, that light carries with it a message billions of years old. A message that says, I was here. I existed. I reflected light. We, in turn, give that light meaning. That's what makes color an illusion and a miracle. It doesn't belong to the universe. It belongs to us. Without our eyes, Saturn would have no gold, no silver, no blue. Without our hearts, it would have no beauty at all. The universe would simply be endless, silent, and unseen. So maybe the illusion isn't in the color. Maybe it's in believing that truth and beauty are separate things. Every image of Saturn, from Galileo's sketches to Cassini's photographs, tells the same story. The universe is vast, but it becomes alive only when we look at it. Color is how the cosmos becomes human. And in that illusion, in that fragile translation of light into feeling, we find the truest vision of all. There is a stillness in the images of Saturn, a calm so perfect it feels divine. The soft bands of cloud, the delicate curve of the rings, the frozen beauty of distance. But beneath that serenity lies motion, constant, violent, and eternal. Saturn is not a tranquil world. It is a storm that never ends. From the outside, it seems peaceful. But if you could descend into its clouds, you would enter chaos. The air thickens, pressure builds, and the winds, those beautiful, silent winds, begin to scream. They race around the planet at speeds reaching 1,800 kilometers per hour. Entire continents of gas twist into spirals larger than Earth. Yet from above, all we see is beauty. That's the paradox of Saturn. Violence disguised as grace. Every photograph, every frame from Cassini hides an orchestra of storms beneath the clouds. There are tempests that last for years. Lightning flashes hundreds of times stronger than anything on Earth. And waves of ammonia and hydrogen churning like an endless sea. The planet's atmosphere is alive with movement. Yet from space, it moves like silk. Imagine standing, if one could stand, at the edge of that atmosphere. You'd see clouds rolling endlessly, layers upon layers, each one shifting faster than the one below. The winds would be invisible, but you'd feel their force, like the pulse of a living god. The air would glow faintly from electrical discharges, silent, unseen, eternal. And yet, despite all that fury, Saturn remains composed. No eruptions like Jupiter's great red spot, no chaotic flashes to remind us of its rage. Its storms are hidden, their power masked by distance and elegance. Saturn's violence is internal. It doesn't need to shout to be magnificent. For decades, scientists believed the planet's pale bands were gentle patterns of convection. Only when the Voyager missions passed by in the 1980s did we realize the truth. Those patterns are scars of ancient tempests. Some storms stretch across tens of thousands of kilometers, great serpents of wind wrapping the planet. One of the most haunting is the Great White Storm, a rare phenomenon that appears roughly once every Saturnian year, about every 30 Earth years. It begins as a small spot of turbulence, then expands with terrifying speed, encircling the planet in a matter of weeks. The clouds erupt, bright and violent, like a wound opening in the calm. And then, as suddenly as it came, it fades, leaving the atmosphere subtly changed, the memory of chaos buried beneath layers of peace. Cassini witnessed one of these storms in 2010. It was breathtaking, not because of destruction, but because of its silence. In the vacuum of space, there is no sound, yet you could see the energy. Lightning flashes illuminated the shadows of the rings. Waves of gas rippled across the equator. It was as if Saturn had sighed. A slow, patient exhale after decades of stillness. At Saturn's North Pole, another enigma spins endlessly, a perfect hexagon. A storm unlike anything else in the solar system. A six-sided jet stream that has persisted for centuries, locked in shape, defying chaos. Scientists have modeled it, studied it, debated it. And yet, no complete explanation exists. The hexagon shouldn't be possible, and yet there it is, rotating with mathematical precision at the top of a planet made of gas. It's one of the greatest metaphors of nature. Order emerging from turbulence. The hexagon of Saturn is not just a weather pattern. It's a symbol, proof that beauty and chaos can coexist, that the universe has its own strange geometry. Cassini's close-up images showed the hexagon glowing in faint blues and greens, its edges sharp, its center a whirling eye of depthless shadow. When sunlight strikes it during Saturn's long summer, the shape shifts, becoming gold and white, like a frozen storm caught between art and physics. Everywhere on Saturn, the same paradox plays out. The deeper you look, the more turbulence you find, yet the more it resembles serenity. Storms rise and vanish without sound. Winds rage without destruction. Lightning flickers beneath clouds thicker than mountains. The entire planet is a meditation on balance, chaos, sculpted into grace. There's something profoundly human about that. We too wear calm faces while storms rage beneath. Saturn mirrors us, or maybe we mirror it. The quiet elegance we admire hides energy we can barely imagine. The still image conceals the struggle for equilibrium. When Cassini dove between the planet and its rings during its final orbits, its instruments recorded faint whispers of the atmosphere, the hiss of charged particles, the magnetic hum of wind. It was like hearing Saturn breathe. For a moment, silence itself became sound. And then, as the spacecraft fell into the clouds, transmitting its last bits of data, that breath was lost. Cassini was gone, but the storms continued, unending. That's the true face of Saturn. Motion eternal. No surface, no pause, only layers of gas spinning in harmony and defiance. The planet never stops, never rests. It's a symphony without silence. When you look at Saturn through a telescope, remember, you're not seeing peace. You're seeing movement slowed by distance, violence softened by beauty. You're seeing time itself, folding in storms that have raged since before humanity learned to dream. Saturn is not just a world. It's a lesson in contradiction. It shows us that perfection isn't stillness, it's balance. That serenity isn't the absence of chaos, it's the mastery of it. Its storms will outlast us. Its winds will blow long after our names fade. And yet, in their endless motion, we find reflection, a mirror of everything restless, searching, and alive within ourselves. The silent storms of Saturn remind us, peace is not what remains when the storm ends. Peace is what exists inside it. If Saturn is the king of beauty, then its moons are the court of miracles, each one strange, distinct, and alive with secrets. There are more than 80 of them, scattered like frozen jewels across space, each carrying a story older than our world. We often picture Saturn alone, drifting through the void. But it is never alone. It is surrounded by a family, a cosmic orchestra, each moon moving to its own rhythm, bound by gravity, yet free in expression. And together, they turn Saturn from a planet into a system, a miniature version of the universe itself. The most famous of them all is Titan, the shrouded giant. Discovered by Cassini and Huygens in 1655, Titan is larger than the planet Mercury. It is the only moon in the solar system with a thick atmosphere, one even denser than Earth's. When spacecraft first approached it, scientists thought they might see oceans of methane and rivers of ice. They were right and wrong. Beneath Titan's golden haze lies a world eerily familiar and profoundly alien. Lakes of liquid methane ripple under a sky of orange smog. Rain falls, not water, but hydrocarbons. Rivers carve valleys through ice mountains. There are dunes, storms, and even seasons. It is, in every sense, a living landscape, just not the kind we know. When the Huygens probe descended through Titan's atmosphere in January 2005, humanity held its breath. For more than 2 hours, it transmitted images as it drifted downward. Through orange mist, through layers of cloud, through silence. And then, it landed. For the first time in history, we saw the surface of a moon beyond our own. Pebbles of water ice lay scattered across a frozen plain. The horizon was flat, hazy, eternal. It was a landscape painted in dusk. In that moment, Titan stopped being an object of speculation. It became a place. But Titan is only one voice in Saturn's choir. Farther out, there's Enceladus, small, bright, and astonishing. Only 500 kilometers across, it would seem insignificant, if not for one impossible fact: it's alive. Not biologically, but geologically, dynamically, energetically. Beneath its icy crust lies an ocean of liquid water, warmed by the gravitational pull of Saturn itself. In 2005, Cassini flew past Enceladus and witnessed something extraordinary. Geysers of water erupting from the South Pole, shooting hundreds of kilometers into space. The plumes glittered in the sunlight, forming part of Saturn's E-ring, a living bridge between moon and planet. Cassini flew through those plumes and detected organic molecules, the chemical seeds of life. Enceladus had become a symbol of possibility, a reminder that even in the coldest places, warmth and perhaps life can exist. Then there is Iapetus, the moon of shadow. One side bright as snow, the other dark as coal. It looks like a yin-yang frozen in orbit, half reflecting sunlight, half swallowing it. For centuries, its mystery puzzled astronomers. Why such stark contrast? The answer lies in motion and dust. As Iapetus moves through space, it collects debris on one hemisphere, painting itself with the remnants of cosmic time. It is, quite literally, a record of its own journey. And let us not forget Mimas, the so-called Death Star moon, scarred by a massive crater that makes it look like something from a science fiction dream. Or Rhea, with its ghostly wisps of ice. Or Tethys, with canyons stretching thousands of kilometers. Each moon a world, each world a question. The more we discovered, the clearer it became that Saturn's system is not static. It breathes, evolves, interacts. Moons pull on rings, rings feed the moons. Gravity sculpts and reshapes everything. It's a delicate dance, one that has lasted for billions of years. Cassini's final mission revealed something almost poetic. The rings themselves may be dying, slowly raining down onto Saturn's atmosphere, feeding it with dust and ice. The planet and its moons are not separate. They are part of a single, living mechanism, creation and destruction intertwined. Think of it, a planet of storms, surrounded by moons of ice and fire, all moving in perfect, silent choreography. No sound, no chaos, just balance. In that balance, we see a reflection of something ancient, the same principle that guides galaxies, atoms, and perhaps even us. Everything connected, everything temporary, everything part of the same music. Saturn's moons are not just satellites. They are witnesses, each holding a fragment of cosmic memory. Titan with its rivers, Enceladus with its ocean, Iapetus with its shadow. They remind us that even in the darkest, coldest corners of the universe, wonder persists. And maybe that's the greatest truth of all. The universe doesn't just exist, it dreams. We, looking at Saturn, are part of that dream. The light that reflects off those icy moons travels 1 billion kilometers, touches the sensors of a telescope, the lens of a spacecraft, the retina of a human eye, and becomes meaning. Saturn's moons don't just orbit their planet. They orbit our imagination. And every time we look up, they remind us that discovery is not about distance, it's about connection. The mystery isn't out there. It's in the fact that we can feel it. They are the most iconic feature in the solar system. Saturn's rings, vast and delicate, visible even through a simple telescope. They look eternal, flawless, almost divine. But like everything in the universe, they have a beginning, and they will have an end. When we look at Saturn, we see beauty suspended in silence. Those rings are so thin, no thicker than a few dozen meters in most places. Yet they stretch for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. A cosmic paradox, massive in scale, fragile in existence. For centuries, we believed they were solid, perhaps made of metal or crystal. Perfect disks orbiting a perfect planet. But when science finally caught up with imagination, we discovered the truth. The rings are made of billions of particles, from tiny grains of dust to boulders the size of houses, all dancing in gravity's rhythm. Each particle reflects sunlight like a mirror, creating the illusion of solidity. But it's not a wall. It's a storm of fragments, a celestial snowfall frozen in orbit. The rings are ancient, yet not timeless. Their age is one of the great debates of astronomy. Some evidence suggests they formed billions of years ago, remnants of Saturn's birth. Others argue they are young, perhaps no more than a few 100 million years old. The shattered remains of a lost moon, torn apart by Saturn's gravity. Either way, they are a monument to both creation and destruction. Imagine the moment they were born. A moon straying too close, ripped apart by tidal forces, its pieces scattering into a luminous halo. Chaos transformed into symmetry. From ruin came beauty. Every ring has a name, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, each a vast region filled with motion. Within them are gaps and waves caused by Saturn's moons, their gravity carving patterns through ice and dust. The rings are alive, constantly shifting. What seems eternal from afar is, in truth, a dance of endless motion. Cassini revealed their details with breathtaking clarity. From up close, the rings are not smooth. They are textured, layered, complex. Shadows stretch across them as Saturn's sunlight glances through the gaps. You can see the fingerprints of moons within them, ripples, bends, resonances, the evidence of invisible hands sculpting harmony from chaos. And perhaps the most haunting discovery, the rings are dying. Slowly, imperceptibly, their material is raining down onto Saturn's atmosphere, pulled by gravity and magnetism. Microscopic particles spiral inward like falling snow, vanishing into the planet they once encircled. NASA calls it ring rain, a quiet, cosmic erosion. In time, tens or hundreds of millions of years, the rings may disappear altogether. The golden halo will fade, leaving behind only faint traces of its memory. Future civilizations might look at Saturn and see a bare, unadorned sphere, never knowing what once surrounded it. And yet, in that inevitability, there is something deeply poetic. The rings are not meant to last. They are a performance, not a monument. Their beauty exists precisely because it is fleeting. The Cassini spacecraft captured one final image before its descent. A view from within the rings, sunlight streaming through them like threads of fire. The planet glowed in the distance, calm and massive, while the rings shimmered like silk. It was a portrait of time itself, the eternal and the ephemeral, existing side by side. We like to imagine the universe as timeless, but Saturn's rings remind us that everything, even beauty, has an expiration date. The cosmos is not static. It is alive, always changing, always becoming. Perhaps that's what makes the rings so hypnotic. We sense their fragility. We see in them our own reflection, a moment of grace suspended in eternity. Each particle within the rings is a traveler, tracing an orbit older than our species. Together, they create harmony from chaos, pattern from destruction. It is, in a way, the story of everything, from galaxies to cells, from stars to us. The rings of Saturn are not just a phenomenon, they are a metaphor. They teach us that beauty and impermanence are inseparable, that nothing needs to last forever to matter. When you look at Saturn, you are witnessing the universe creating art out of entropy. And maybe that's the secret meaning of it all, that transience is not loss, but life. The rings will vanish one day, yes. But while they exist, They remind us of something precious, that even in a universe built on decay, there is room for grace, that even in silence, there is music, and that even in the coldest corners of space, beauty can bloom, if only for a while. Every world has two faces, one of light, one of shadow. Saturn is no different. It glows like a golden lantern in the dark, but where its light fades, there lies mystery deeper than its storms or rings. The human eye sees beauty. Science sees contrast. Light and darkness weave together across Saturn's atmosphere in slow, majestic motion. Its days stretch long, its nights longer still. The sun, so distant, casts a pale light, only 1/100th as bright as on Earth. Yet even that faint glow gives Saturn a presence of impossible grace. As the planet turns, its rings cast vast shadows upon its clouds, ribbons of darkness sliding across its surface like the hands of a cosmic clock. And when Saturn moves between the sun and its moons, it becomes the artist, painting its satellites with eclipses, sculpting their icy faces with alternating light and void. To see Saturn in shadow is to see its true nature. From the night side, the planet isn't golden. It's blue, a deep, haunting indigo. Cassini captured that secret in 2006, when it passed into the shadow of the planet and looked back toward the sun. What it saw was beyond words. Saturn, haloed by its rings, glowing with ethereal light scattered through ice and dust. In that moment, the planet looked like an eye, the universe staring at itself. And there, tucked within the rings, a pale blue dot, Earth, home, a single pixel suspended in infinity. Humanity reflected in Saturn's shadow. It was one of the most humbling images ever taken. Not because it showed us Saturn's grandeur, but because it showed us how small we are within it. Shadow has always been part of Saturn's mythology. The ancients associated it with time, limitation, endings, the slow passage of all things toward decay. To them, Saturn was the bringer of melancholy, the reminder that beauty fades. And yet, in that shadow, there was also wisdom. The Romans celebrated Saturnalia, a festival of light in the darkest days of winter, because they believed that even in decline, there is renewal. Cassini's mission echoed that truth centuries later. As it orbited the planet, it moved constantly between day and night, between illumination and eclipse. Each pass revealed a different Saturn, golden, then blue, then black. No single color, no single truth, only layers of perception. When sunlight hits the upper atmosphere, methane scatters it into soft blues. Deeper down, ammonia clouds turn the light pale yellow. In the shadows, the planet glows faintly with its own warmth, a reminder that even in darkness, energy endures. Every world, like every life, has its shadows, but without them, light would lose meaning. Saturn's beauty depends on its darkness. Its rings are visible only because they catch sunlight against the void. The same is true for us. What defines us isn't just what shines, but what hides, what endures quietly beneath the glow. When Cassini captured Saturn eclipsing the sun, the planet seemed to absorb the light and radiate it back softer, gentler, more human. Scientists called it a backscattering. Poets called it revelation. The truth is, it was both. The play of shadow and light on Saturn is not just physics. It's metaphor. It tells us that the universe itself understands contrast, that creation and destruction, brightness and silence, existence and absence, are threads of the same tapestry. Saturn's rings, when half in shadow, look like piano keys suspended in space. Each orbit, each beam of light, another note in the music of time. The dark gaps between them are pauses, not emptiness. Without silence, there is no song. Without shadow, there is no light. Perhaps that's why Saturn captivates us so deeply. It reminds us that darkness isn't the enemy of beauty. It's its partner. The two complete each other. Every planet reflects light, but Saturn transforms it. It bends, filters, and softens it until the harshness of the sun becomes art. It teaches us that illumination doesn't have to blind. It can heal. When we look at Saturn, we're not just looking at a distant world. We're looking at the balance that sustains everything, the harmony between what is seen and what is hidden. And maybe that's why, when Cassini sent its final image, Saturn half in light, half in darkness, it felt like a farewell, not just from a machine, but from the universe itself. A reminder that beauty is not in brightness alone, but in the dance between shadow and the light. Saturn has been seen by poets, painters, and astronomers for centuries. But the greatest explorers to ever visit it were not human. They were machines. Silent emissaries of our curiosity, built from metal, silicon, and hope. They carried no hearts, no eyes that could cry, no hands to touch. Yet through them, humanity reached further than ever before. They were our extensions, our will, our wonder, our voice in the cosmic silence. It began with Pioneer 11. In 1979, this small, fragile spacecraft flew past Saturn, the first human-made object to do so. It sent back blurred, grainy images, but to those who saw them, they were miracles. Saturn was no longer a dot in the telescope. It was a world. You could see the rings, the shadows, the pale, glowing curve of the planet itself. Then came Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. Twin ambassadors launched into the unknown. They passed by Saturn in the early 1980s, revealing its secrets in dazzling detail. Voyager showed us the hexagonal storm at the pole, the intricacy of the rings, the first close-up views of Titan. Each image carried a message, not just of discovery, but of identity. We were no longer earthbound. Humanity had become a spacefaring species, even if only through the eyes of its creations. But it was Cassini that changed everything. Launched in 1997, Cassini took 7 years to reach Saturn. When it arrived in 2004, it entered orbit. And for the first time, we didn't just visit Saturn. We stayed. For 13 years, Cassini circled the planet more than 290 times. It flew through the rings, mapped the moons, studied the atmosphere, and even dove between the planet and its rings. A feat no mission had ever attempted. It became part of Saturn's story, like a moon that had chosen to observe instead of orbit. And then there was Huygens, the probe that rode aboard Cassini, destined for Titan. In 2005, it separated and descended through the golden clouds of that mysterious world. For a few hours, it became the first human creation to land in the outer solar system, the first to touch an alien shore beyond Mars. It sent back photos that defied belief, rivers, valleys, and stones that looked like they could have existed on Earth. For a brief moment, we were standing on another world, beneath another sky. The machines dreamed, and through them, we did too. Cassini's mission was more than science. It was a work of art. Every maneuver, every image, was a brushstroke on the canvas of cosmic history. It taught us how delicate the universe can be, and how determined we are to understand it. Its sensors read the whispers of Saturn's magnetic field, the shimmer of particles in the rings, the reflections of sunlight off methane lakes. It heard radio waves from lightning storms, saw the birth of auroras, and even measured the rain of the rings falling upon the planet. In its last months, Cassini began its grand finale, a series of daring dives between Saturn and its innermost rings. Each pass brought it closer, through regions no spacecraft had ever entered. It was dangerous, unpredictable, but necessary. Scientists called it the final act. But for many, it felt like poetry. On September 15, 2017, Cassini made its final descent. It plunged into Saturn's atmosphere, transmitting data until the very last second. Its signal, a faint tone carried across 1 billion kilometers, grew weaker, then vanished. And in that silence, something beautiful happened. Humanity wept for a machine. We grieved not because we lost technology, but because Cassini had become something greater, a symbol of what we are capable of when we dare to reach beyond ourselves. It had shown us a world of storms and serenity, of moons that whisper with oceans beneath their ice, of light that bends through rings like music. It had shown us Saturn and, in its reflection, ourselves. When Cassini's final signal faded, it wasn't an end. It was an echo, a reminder that even the smallest creations of human hands can touch eternity. The Voyagers are still traveling, still sending faint whispers from beyond the edge of the solar system. Cassini is gone, but its legacy lives in data, in memory, in wonder. The machines that dream for us remind us of what makes us human. The desire to see, to know, to understand. They are our eyes in the dark, our voice in the silence. And one day, perhaps, when we return to Saturn, not through machines, but in person, we will find them again. Frozen relics of our first great reach into the unknown. And maybe, just maybe, we will whisper back to them, "We made it." Because in the end, exploration is not about technology or triumph. It's about connection between what is human and what is infinite. The machines dreamed, and through them, we became dreamers who could finally touch the stars. When Cassini vanished into the clouds of Saturn, it didn't simply end. It transformed. What remained was not just data or memory, but something larger, an echo, a resonance that still vibrates through every image, every discovery, every dream that mission inspired. For 13 years, Cassini had been our eyes, our ears, our witness in the realm of shadows and storms. It taught us that space is not silent, it hums. Saturn's magnetic field sings, its rings whisper, its moons murmur beneath the ice. Cassini heard it all, and then became part of that song. Even now, scientists continue to analyze the data it sent before its final plunge. Each byte holds a mystery, each reading a clue to the grand design of the Saturnian system. Cassini didn't just reveal Saturn, it redefined it. It found lightning storms that lasted for months, auroras brighter than any on Earth, and radio emissions that pulsed like heartbeat rhythms. It recorded the sound of plasma waves, eerie, melodic, almost alive. In those signals, we caught the voice of the cosmos speaking in frequencies older than language. And then there were the discoveries that changed everything we thought we knew about life. Enceladus, once an icy, insignificant moon, revealed geysers of water vapor rich with organics, hinting at an ocean beneath. Titan, once thought frozen and barren, showed rivers, lakes, and methane rain. Cassini didn't just observe. It revealed a new possibility, that the ingredients for life might exist far beyond Earth, hiding under ice, waiting for time to stir them awake. The spacecraft became more than a machine. It became a philosopher, asking questions we hadn't dared to voice. What if life doesn't need sunlight? What if warmth can come from tides and gravity? What if the universe teems with hidden oceans, breathing quietly beneath frozen shells? Cassini gave us these questions and left us to chase the answers. Its final descent was not an accident or a failure. It was a sacrifice. Scientists planned it to protect the very moons it discovered, to ensure that no earthly microbes would contaminate them. Cassini burned so that Titan and Enceladus could remain pure. In its destruction, it performed one last act of preservation. As it entered Saturn's atmosphere, its instruments continued to send data until the end. Pressure, temperature, chemical composition, as if narrating its own death. "I'm still here," the signals seemed to say. "I'm still learning." And then, silence. But silence is never empty. In that silence, the echo began. Cassini's discoveries ripple outward still. They've inspired new missions, Dragonfly, which will one day fly across Titan skies, and Enceladus Orbilander, a concept mission that could search for life beneath the ice. They've inspired stories, music, art, and dreams. Every generation of scientists who looks toward Saturn does so through Cassini's eyes. Its legacy isn't in hardware or telemetry, it's in perspective. It taught us that exploration isn't about conquest, but connection. That to truly know the universe, we must first listen to it. When Cassini's signal faded, 1 billion kilometers away, the Deep Space Network antenna in California caught the last faint tone. It was barely audible, like a whisper carried on wind. The engineers sat in silence. Some cried, others smiled, because they knew. It had done what it came to do. It had turned curiosity into meaning. The final image Cassini sent was of Saturn's night side, faintly illuminated by the light reflecting off the rings. A planet seen in its own reflection, like a soul glimpsing itself in a mirror. That image became a symbol of our place in the universe. Small, brief, but aware. Cassini's echo isn't bound to Saturn. It lives wherever wonder survives. It lives in classrooms where children stare at the night sky. It lives in laboratories where scientists dream of oceans under alien moons. It lives in anyone who dares to ask, "What's next?" The mission ended, but the dream continues. In data, in memory, in us. And one day, when humanity returns to Saturn, not through machines, but through living eyes, we'll hear that echo again. Not as a transmission through space, but as a heartbeat. Steady, familiar, infinite. Cassini is gone, but its echo remains in the silence between stars. The story of Saturn isn't over. It's only just begun. Every discovery, every question left unanswered by Cassini, is a thread pulling us toward the future. Humanity is not done with this world of storms and silence. In many ways, Saturn has only just started to reveal its truth. Because for all we've seen, the moons, the rings, the colors, the storms, there's still one mystery left. What comes next? When Cassini's mission ended, something remarkable happened. The world didn't turn away from Saturn. Instead, scientists, artists, engineers, and dreamers turned toward it again. This time, not with telescopes, but with plans. The next stage of discovery will not be about looking at Saturn from afar. It will be about returning. Titan, with its dense atmosphere and methane seas, has become the new frontier. NASA's Dragonfly mission, launching in the 2030s, will send a nuclear-powered drone to fly across its skies. Not orbit, not hover, but fly. It will soar over dunes, glide through mist, and land on alien shores. It will search for chemical fingerprints, signs that Titan might harbor the beginnings of life. Imagine it. A craft buzzing across an orange horizon, the sun a distant star, the landscape glowing dimly beneath a sky so thick you could almost touch it. The first flight on another world where the air itself is made of mystery. But that's not all. Plans are forming for missions to Enceladus, to dive through its icy plumes, and maybe, just maybe, taste the spray of an alien ocean. Future orbiters will carry instruments sensitive enough to detect amino acids, methane cycles, and organic compounds. They will listen for the heartbeat of life beneath miles of ice. Because if life exists anywhere beyond Earth, Saturn's moons are among the most likely places to find it. Not Mars, not Venus, but these frozen worlds circling a planet of light. The future of Saturn is not science fiction, it's destiny. And maybe, one day, we'll go there ourselves. Picture a future colony floating in Saturn's upper atmosphere. Massive balloons buoyed by hydrogen, drifting in golden light. Below them, endless clouds roll in silence. Above them, the rings stretch across the sky like pathways to infinity. Titan might host outposts near its methane lakes, where human explorers could walk in protective suits beneath a burnt orange sky. Enceladus might become our new Antarctica, a frozen research world, the edge of habitability itself. These dreams are no longer fantasy. They are the logical next step in a journey we began when Cassini first fell silent. But beyond the missions, beyond the technology, there's something deeper drawing us back. Something human. Saturn is not just a scientific goal. It's a mirror, a reminder of what it means to reach. The rings we see are like the grooves of a record, carrying the music of the cosmos. Every orbit tells a story, every moon is a note, and we, fragile, curious, determined, are learning to listen. Perhaps, in time, humanity will build observatories on Titan, where the thick air softens the light of distant stars, or send submarines into Enceladus's hidden ocean, listening for echoes of motion beneath the ice. Each step forward will be a continuation of the song that began when the first telescope turned toward the heavens. The future in Saturn's rings isn't only about where we'll go, it's about what we'll become. Because the more we explore the cosmos, the more we discover that we are part of it. We don't just live in the universe. We are its way of knowing itself. When we send machines to Saturn, when we build wings for Titan, when we dream of oceans beneath Enceladus, we're doing more than exploring. We're remembering. Remembering that curiosity is survival, that wonder is purpose, that to be human is to never stop reaching. Someday, when future explorers gaze back toward Earth from the edge of Saturn's rings, they'll see our pale blue dot suspended in the distance. And they'll understand how far we've come. And maybe, as they look across the golden curve of Saturn's light, they'll hear something faint, a whisper, a signal, an echo, the last heartbeat of Cassini, reminding them that dreams never truly end. Because Saturn is not the end of exploration. It is the beginning of everything that comes after. The journey that began with wonder ends and begins again in silence. Saturn, with its golden rings and ghostly moons, remains where it always has been, patient, timeless, waiting. But something has changed. Not Saturn, us. When humanity first looked up, we saw gods. Later we saw orbits, matter, and equations. But now, after centuries of searching, we see meaning. Saturn is not just a planet in space. It is a reminder of who we are becoming. Explorers not just of the universe, but of our own potential. Every discovery around Saturn has been a reflection. The rings, teaching us beauty in impermanence. The moons, revealing that life may thrive in the coldest, most unexpected places. The storms, showing us the balance between chaos and calm. We learned that the cosmos isn't distant. It's intimate. Every photon reflected from Saturn's clouds carries history. Light born in the heart of the sun, traveling for more than an hour across emptiness, only to reach the sensors of a tiny spacecraft, or the eyes of someone standing on Earth, looking through a telescope. That light connects everything. In the end, Saturn is not a mystery to be solved. It's a conversation to be continued. We send machines, we build dreams. We fall, we rise, and every time we reach a new horizon, we find ourselves reflected in what we discover. The farther we go into space, the closer we come to understanding what it means to be human. Cassini's ashes now drift somewhere deep within Saturn's clouds, atoms scattered into the planet's endless sky. Perhaps one day, those particles will rise again, suspended in a future storm, illuminated by lightning, seen by another explorer. Maybe, in some distant century, another ship will arrive and detect traces of something strange in the upper atmosphere. Silicon, titanium, gold. The remnants of a dream that refused to fade. That will be the infinite return, the moment when we finally realize that nothing we send into the universe is ever truly lost. We are all part of a cosmic cycle: discovery, awe, silence, and rebirth. The same cycle that drives planets to form and fade, stars to ignite and die, and civilizations to rise and reach beyond their skies. Our destiny has never been to remain still. The universe moves, and so must we. Perhaps centuries from now, children born on Titan or Enceladus will look up and see Saturn filling half their sky. They'll study its storms and rings as we once studied the moon. To them, Earth will be the pale blue dot, the distant, mythic homeland, and they will feel what we feel now: awe, belonging, and the urge to continue. The dream that began with Cassini will not end there. It will evolve in wings, in sails, in voices carried across new worlds. The first explorers of Saturn will not be remembered as the end of an era, but as the beginning of the human chapter of the cosmos. Because that's what Saturn represents, not an endpoint, but a threshold, the edge between what we know and what waits beyond. The golden gate between the solar system we've mastered and the vast, uncharted sea beyond Neptune and the stars. When the next explorers leave for Saturn, they won't be seeking answers. They'll be seeking continuity. The same pull that drew Galileo to his telescope, Huygens to his sketches, Cassini to his orbit, and us to this very moment. Saturn is the circle completed, the echo fulfilled, the reflection returned. We began by wondering if we were alone. Now we know we were never separate. Every atom in our bodies, every idea we've ever dreamed, came from the same stardust that paints Saturn's rings. We don't just gaze at the universe, we are its memory, made conscious. And so, as we turn our eyes to the next horizon, to Uranus, to Neptune, to the interstellar void, Saturn remains behind us, glowing softly, whispering, "Don't stop. Keep going. I'll be here when you return." Because the story of Saturn is not about distance. It's about belonging. It's about a species that dared to build machines of wonder, to turn curiosity into creation, to look at infinity and say, "Let's begin." And in that beginning, in that quiet defiance of fear and finality, we find our truest reflection. Not in the light of the sun, nor the gold of the rings, but in the endless human will to reach, to dream, and to return. The infinite return, not back to where we started, but forward, into what we were always meant to become.